Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey guys, I have a joke for you. The government is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
Well, that's the way Baby Joel laughs, and I think sometimes I might laugh that way too. Who knows? Anyway, hey, tonight's show, just lean in a little bit. We're going to talk with a gentleman, a good friend of mine. His name is Herman Mendoza, and he wrote a book here called Shifting Shadows: How a New York Drug Lord Found Freedom in the Last Place He Expected. And he built his kingdom in Queens, New York. He made a fortune selling cocaine with his brothers up and down the Eastern Seaboard. He had apartments around the city for his mistresses and a place in the Poconos for his nuclear family, his wonderful family. And when Herman and his brothers were busted in a large-scale crackdown, his kingdom crumbled. He was ready to kill himself rather than live behind bars. And I'm just going to put a ... in there just to find out a little bit about his childhood and some things. I think you're going to be fascinated with tonight's show. If you have maybe young people who you want to hear, if you're someone who works in the prison system, if you're someone who's interested in a story like this, a Pablo Escobar-esque type story, well, stay tuned. Tonight we're you got a QR code above, and that takes you to a link tree. If you're on your cell phone and you can't use your cell phone to figure out the link tree, just go to chiefmischiefmaker.com. On that link tree, there's a definition of what it means to be a mischief maker and how you can become a mischief maker in your part of the world. And also, there's just a lot of information about different elements of my bio, ways to get a hold of me, but then all the other guests, ways to get a hold of our guests, including tonight's guest. And then, of course, a link to our YouTube channel where you can just watch as many of the shows as you want, do what they call on Netflix binge watching, and have a great time checking out some of the topics that we discuss on the Mischief Maker Show. And also tonight, if you are watching this at this moment live, guess what? You have carte blanche to weigh in with questions, with comments, and then Mel is going to be making sure that every question is germane to the topic this evening. So let's jump right into a song. It's a song I wrote some time ago. It first was a spoken word type thing. I have a friend of mine, in fact, the gentleman who does the intro and the outro to the show, Herman Veal. If you go to the link tree, he's at the very bottom. Connect with him if you need any voiceover talent. Forget about AI. You want someone with a James Earl Jones voice who's live and can really sell whatever it is that you're trying to communicate to other people. Anyway, Herman, he did a spoken word, and then I just, as I began to think about it, I said, no, this needs to be a song. So stay tuned. In a few seconds, you're going to hear history. I'm sick and tired of repeating myself.
I'm history and I'm sick and tired of repeating myself. Been watching for centuries, seen it all unfold. Humans are humans, all from the same mold. I was there when Satan swelled with pride. I was also there when Jesus died. Been watching Africa, Israel, and Algeria, Russia, China, Persia, and Syria, England, Rome, the Huns and Bombay, Turkey, Greece, France, and the USA. From slavery's dark days to civil rights fought, Black history's chapters, battles hard fought, segregation, discrimination we must remember. But it's time to unite and make amends together. One thing I've seen since I was just a teen, a lot of good people outweigh the few evil. Break the chains, break the cycle, let's move forward, let love be our revival. No more repeating the mistakes of the past. It's time for change, let's make it last. I'm sick and tired, let's break free and embrace uncomfortability. No more ignoring, let's heal the divide. Learn from our past, let love be our guide. In America's story, chapters filled with pride, but also deliberate acts of shame we won't hide. Native land stolen, oppression and pain. It's time to acknowledge, it's time to reclaim. From the Civil War to battles for justice and peace, the fight for equality will never cease. We can't erase the past, but we can grow. Let's build a future where the truth will glow. Sick and tired of repeating myself, but hope lingers on. It's time to delve into a world where history's lessons we've learned. Let's rewrite the future, let humanity be heard. Break the change, break the cycle, let's move forward, let God bring revival. No more repeating the mistakes of the past. It's time for change, let's make it last. Break the chains, break the cycle, let's move forward, let God bring revival. No more repeating the mistakes of the past. It's time for change, let's make it last.
That's a song that I hope you enjoyed. I'm coming out with a new album. I'm calling it, I'm calling it The Mischief Maker Attitude. And when it comes out, you'll know all about it. And we hope that it'll be well received. So, and that song will be on the album too. A CD and maybe later on one of those big old LPs. Remember those? I think they're all the rage nowadays. Everything old becomes new. So tonight we have Herman Mendoza. Herman, come on in.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Hey, Herman. You're in Queens, New York, right?
I'm in Queens, New York. Yes.
Okay. Now, I teased a little bit about what your book here, and it's now a documentary film available. This book is available everywhere, Amazon, eBay, and all kinds of different places around the world, and really encourage people. Is it an audio book also?
It's an audio. Yeah.
Great.
Audio book as well. Yes.
Knowing you, I figured an audio, video,
Yes.
everything.
Everything.
If you could let's put a pin in all the other stuff and just go back into your childhood, where you grew up. Tell us a little bit about your family system, your parents, your siblings, your friends, and what influenced you in your early years.
Of course. So I was born in New York, Queens. My parents are from the Dominican Republic, and they came to this country in 1965, searching and looking for a better way of life. New York City was the place where they settled. They left this oppression in the Dominican Republic. It was being governed by a man by the name of Rafael Trujillo. He was a dictator in the Dominican Republic. And so they fled the country. They left to America, and they settled in Queens. And so they brought with them my eldest brother and my second eldest brother. And they extended their family into, as a matter of fact, they wanted 3 additional children. And they had 3 additional children, and they were all boys. My mom was looking for a girl, but unfortunately, she did not have a girl. So we're 5 brothers.
Wow.
I'm the youngest out of the 5. And so we were brought up in a town called Corona, Queens, in the borough of Queens. There's 5 boroughs in New York City, for those that are not familiar with New York City. And during that time, gangs were sort of surfacing in the New York City area. Hip hop was coming out in the late 70s, 78, 79. And that was trending, and break dancing. And so I got involved in that kind of lifestyle. I figured, hey, this is the part of the culture here in New York, in Queens, New York. And just for your audience, Queens, it's made out of over 70 countries represented.
My goodness.
In the borough of Queens. As a matter of fact, it came out in the world's Guinness Book World's Record. It came out that over 160 languages spoken.
My goodness.
In the borough of Queens alone. So you can only imagine. And so growing up in this environment in the Queens area, I started to embrace the culture. The culture was hip hop, gangs, and I was drawn to that. I figured all these kids are doing it. Why not get involved with them? And so I was introduced with marijuana. Back in those days, it was called Reefa, Chiba, and was hooked on marijuana, and then eventually was introduced to cocaine. And I tried cocaine for the very first time, and I was hooked.
How old?
I was 14 years old.
My goodness.
14 years old. And once I started to engage in cocaine, got involved in some gang activities, and eventually ended up in a juvenile detention center called Spofford in the Bronx. It's no longer called Spofford, but back in those days, and was arrested for robbery and sent to this juvenile detention center. Young kid, 14 years of age, not knowing what I was, confronting here with the other kids, and got into some brawls, some fights, and it did about a year in prison, a year and 2 months. And once I was released, my parents concocted a plan. They said, we got to get this kid out of New York City. And so they sent me off to live with my grandparents, thinking that that's going to shape me, that's going to change my behavior, it's going to change my mindset. And they sent me off to the Dominican Republic into a private school. They enlisted me in a private school, and I rebelled against the teachers there.
Was that in Santo Domingo or
Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic?
Santiago? Where's
it was
that?
in Bonao. It's not that far from Santiago. So
okay.
Santiago is about a 45-minute drive to an hour drive. And so they enlisted me into the school, and I tried to adjust. My Spanish wasn't that good back then. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm from New York, I know that I have Dominican roots, but I want to go back to New York. And so I rebelled against my grandparents. After a year spending there, I was expelled out of school for not attending school.
How did they know you're rebelling?
Well, I wasn't doing my homework. I was getting home late. I was drinking alcohol. It was readily available in this country, because everyone was drinking. It seemed like every teenager was drinking, and there was no restricted age group. Anyone could just enter a bar and say, hey, I want a beer, una cerveza, and they'll give you a beer. And so I started to drink and get home late. And so my grandparents said, we're going to shape you. We're going to take you out, that you got expelled from school. We're going to take you to a property they own. They own farming land, and they put me to work with them. And it was hard labor, right?
Wow.
And he was harvesting plátanos, plantains, and rice. And I was like, this is crazy. I'm not a farmer, And so I became even more rebellious towards my grandparents. And eventually, my grandfather contacted my mom and said, you got to get this kid. I'm going to get this kid out of here. I'm going to send him back to New York because we can't tolerate his behavior. And there is when
he tried to break you and couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. He tried through hard labor.
Mm-hmm.
They enlisted me in a private school, and all of that failed. And prior to sending me back to the United States, I met my wife in the same town where my grandparents are from and my mother was born.
No,
because my father was born
wow.
my father was born in Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
And I met her through another friend that I knew from New York, that she was living in Bonao, in Dominican Republic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I engaged in small talks, and we got to know each other. And then they sent me off to live with my parents once again.
Now, your brothers, what were they doing at that time? And were you communication with them? Were they trying to talk sense into you, or were they enabling, kind of behind you?
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to put sense into me. But two of my older brothers, it was my second eldest brother and my fourth eldest brother, they began to engage in the late 80s to engage with the cartel from Colombia. And so they started to traffic drugs from Colombia to the United States, to New York. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know how deep they were involved in the drug world, in the distribution world. And so when they finally sent me over to New York to live with my parents, I was back at high school, and they sent my wife to live with her parents because they moved back to New York. They were living in the Dominican Republic. And so she was living with her parents here in the States. And so we met in odd places. We met at funeral homes. There were people getting murdered,
my goodness,
in my community due to drug trafficking. So back in those days, they would kidnap drug lords, drug dealers, take their money, kill them. And there were people that we knew because there were people from the community, people from the neighborhood. And so I would go to these funeral homes, and I would run into my wife. She was just a friend back then, but eventually became my wife. And then we started a family. And I moved out of my home right out of high school. So in 1987, I moved out of my home, and I was.
So you went back to school then?
Yeah, I went to school
when you got back. Okay.
Yeah. And so right out of high school, I went and I told my mom, I said, I'm getting married. I'm moving out. And she said, but you're not going to college? I said, no, I want to get married. I want to, go live with my wife. And so she said, well, if you leave, don't count on me, for rent money. And she just wanted to be tough, so I could make a decision to either go to college and just wait and don't get married at that time. And so I moved out.
What was your dad doing? What kind of work was he involved in?
So my dad was working in a factory in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so back in those days, it was owned by the Jewish community, and he was a metal worker. He was building all sorts of like metal pieces and have you. He was an engineer, and so in the Dominican Republic under Rafael Trujillo, my father was a soldier, and so he would make rifles for the military.
Wow!
And so when he came to this country, he was working for this Jewish company. But he was sort of, my dad wasn't really involved in our upbringing. He would come home, provide for the family, but it was my mother that was really worried about us, and my eldest brother, which eventually he became a chiropractor, a doctor. But during that time, I was, I was working. I had a job. I was working for a company out in Queens. And paying the rent, everything was going fine. And my wife got pregnant, and all of a sudden I got laid off from work.
Wow.
And I knew what my brothers were doing at that moment, because they were driving luxury cars, $150,000 vehicles, Mercedes 600. They were flashing money, party life. And I contacted my brother and I said, look, I don't want to get deep into your business, but I need money. And so he says, you know what, come over to our stash houses. So he had a few security measures in place for me to enter into this apartment. And so I had to dial some numbers. He had to give me a beeper, and they had codes on it. And then I would eventually go into this building complex. And once I entered this apartment, all I saw was before me was stacks of cash. And so he said, I want you to count this money. Let me know how much cash is there. And so as I was observing my environment in this apartment, I saw 2 MAC-10s, machine guns. And so I counted the money, and I told them there's $1.2 million in cash.
My goodness.
And so that night, the cartel couriers came. We came down with duffel bags in a community that's an affluent community. And we came down with duffel bags, laundry bags, full of cash. No one knew what we were doing. And I handed the money over to the cartel. We stood with our profit. And we made on that sale, we made about $180,000. And so I was rewarded with close to $10,000. And so at that moment, I was like, I'm hooked.
Which is huge at that time.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm in. And so I was at that moment, not just counting money. I started to build a distribution point and a clientele base. So I was dealing with hundreds and hundreds of kilograms of cocaine and bringing in, and they were bringing in through Miami, through the West Coast. And we had couriers, and we'll say we wanted in New York City, we wanted it in different hotels, in stash houses. And I was just moving hundreds of kilograms of cocaine, millions of dollars going through my hands, party life, going to the China Club, Palladium, all these clubs, VIP, hanging out with celebrities, party life, sleeping with different women. Never took stuff home. My wife knew what I was doing, but I was just living a chaotic and crazy lifestyle at that time.
Did she have any opinions or communicate with you her concerns or anything like that at that time?
She did. She was always scared because during that time we were hearing a lot of kidnappings, killings, and she was concerned and she was worried. So I moved her out of the state. I had a home in an enclosed community. It was a gated community in Pennsylvania. I had apartments and condominiums in Queens. And so I would shuffle her around, but I had her stationed or living in a home in Pennsylvania. And so, I had to have guns in different apartments because she was always concerned about my well-being, and plus her kids, our kids. But I never took stuff at home. I tried to keep away. I tried to be that 9-to-5 business guy, while I was doing crime, and then come home and be that father to my kids and the husband to my wife.
Now, as you advanced, how high did you get with your brothers? I mean, when you talk about siblings involved in business, making money, everyone's happy, but there can be, hey, mom liked you better than me, or, any of that stuff emerge as you were?
No, it was a sort of a cohesiveness of togetherness and oneness in our enterprise, in our business, because we were brothers.
Yeah, trust.
So we never had, exactly, it was that trust that we had with one another. So we never had any issues. But eventually, in 1995, 96, 97, around that time, we got busted with a large amount of cocaine, and it made the news. It was about $3.8 million of cocaine. And my brother had another stint. So he got arrested with $2 million of cash and 87 kilograms of cocaine. So he got bailed out. And you won't believe this. He got bailed out with $1 because they thought that he was a guy that just went into this apartment, the stash house. And he said, no, I don't know these guys. I just came here to get my radio.
Oh, my goodness.
And so they let him out on a $1.
They believed him.
And they believed him. And so once he was released, he fled to the Dominican Republic. And so they eventually knew that he was he was the leader of the cartel together with us. But they had no evidence on myself, my other brother.
Well, maybe they wanted to send him back so they could observe him. And follow him. So he thought he was getting off easy, but they were, he was a snitch, whether he realized it or not, that it was a kind of unintended consequence, perhaps.
Exactly. They're probably tracking his trail. And so forth. So he fled to the Dominican Republic. And then I'm getting deeper into with the cartel because there was a contact directly with the cartel from Colombia. So we would get it at a certain price, and we would say we want it at so-and-so location, and we would have it there. And so then what happened was that my brother decided to come back to the States.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back to the States, and we got busted, again, with $3.8 million of cocaine, right? So when he comes back to the States, we're in jail, no bail, right? It comes on the news. I'm in Rikers Island. It was a state case at the time. It was a state case.
Wow.
I'm in Rikers Island. I hired
not federal. It was
not
federal
at the time. Not federal.
Oh,
at the
wow.
time. So then the attorneys that we had in place, they were our go-to attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
And so we paid them $500,000, and they came back. They said, look, we have no bail, but we can work out a deal with the prosecutors, and I could get you 3 to 9 years of incarceration. And your other brother, because there was 3 of us involved in this activity. My second eldest fled the country, and my 4th eldest and I got busted with 32 kilograms of cocaine. And so
what was that like? Kind of take us into, were you in a car? Did they pull you over?
I was in a car.
To escape?
Yeah, I was in a car. I was heading to Manhattan to see a client, and he was staying at the Waldorf Astoria. And so we were driving to the city before we made the Queensboro Bridge. Before we even crossed it, there was a patrol car coming in front of our vehicle. And I caught on to this, and my brother, we said, this is for us. They want to do a traffic stop so that then the rest of the officers can arrest us and apprehend us, and then have that as an excuse that we were stopped because we ran a red light. So we fled out of the vehicle, and that's when we got busted. And they found the drugs in the trunk of the vehicle because we were taking it from our stash house to this client in Manhattan.
Now, did you give them quite a run? Were they pretty huffy and puffy when they caught you? And
at that time, I was huffy and puffy. All the drinking, all the party life.
Yeah.
I only ran about a block, 2 blocks away.
And they got you. They pulled you down.
They got me. They got me. So, while in prison, my lawyers go, we can get you 4 to 12 years of incarceration. And my brother, 4 to 12 years, and they can get me 3 to 9. And I said, I'm going to sign on the dotted line. Tell me. So I signed.
How old again are you at this point?
I was in my 20s, early 20s. Yeah.
Okay.
So I signed. They sent me to Ulster County Correctional Facility. They sent my brother also there. And then they send them off to Watertown, upstate New York. And then they send me to a program where I could have, they said, you have the option. You can do the 3 to 9 years of incarceration, or you can go to a military style camp and do 6 months of incarceration. I said, sign me in. I'm going to the camp. So I go to this camp, military style, and they said, look, you got to go through this military style regimen. And if you pass, you get to be released in 6 months. Now I had already in prison about 1.5 years in jail. So I did this program, and I'm in jail. You got ex-Marines on my face, give me parade rest, give me 1,000 push-ups. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But I had, I had to do it. I'm like, I want to get out of jail. And I remember I had my very first sort of like spiritual, it wasn't even a spiritual encounter. It was more that I wanted to get away with my crime, right? And I wanted to pass this program. So I went to a chapel and I just prayed, I said, hey, God, if you allow me to get out of jail, I promise you I'm not going to drink alcohol for 6 months. That was the promise I made, which, it was just for me to get out of jail. It was sort of a negotiation I wanted to do with God. So I got released after 6 months. I finished the promise, not drinking alcohol. I was released. And when the 6 months came in, at that moment, that's when I said, I want to go back to drinking. And then I went back to drinking, and I went back to the party life. And there I ran into an old acquaintance, and he was the second in command of one of the cartels in Cali, Colombia. And he said, Herman, I'm controlling now a ton of cocaine. Do you want it? And at that moment, I was raised, all these thoughts came into my mind. I'm like, man, I don't want to go back to jail. I definitely don't want to go back to jail. And then I thought and said, you know what? I can make millions of dollars again. And so I went back to where I was seated at with a friend, and I kept on drinking alcohol. And my friend said, what was that conversation about? The guy you were talking to. And I said, it was about cocaine. And he's controlling now a ton of cocaine. And he said, Herman, I will move all the drugs for you like years ago, because he used to work for me, this guy. And he said, we can make money again, millions of dollars. And I thought about it, and I went right back into crime.
Wow.
And
let's put a pin in that right now. We have to take a break at the top of the hour here. And we have Paul Castro has a question or a comment. We're going to come back to that. So Mel, if you could bring that question down, and then we're going to have our break for a sponsor, and then come back to that question and continue what you're talking about. Go ahead, Mel.
Attacking Egypt was a gamble, but I believed it would bring glory to France, open up a trade route to India, and stick my thumb in the eye of the British. I never actually saw the Rosetta Stone with my own eyes, and I regret that. Take time today to learn more about the Rosetta Stone Traveling Exhibit Project. And that's an order.
Well, so that's an order. If you want to have more information about the Rosetta universe, go to the QR code above or go to chiefmischiefmaker.com. And also we have an incentive gift for any donation, tax-deductible donation, anywhere in the world. This is a belt that I designed that describes what Jack Johnson did in winning the world championship in 1908 and then the fight of the century. This belt weighs about 10 pounds. We've had a number of folks like Sugar Shane Mosley, and Bernard Hopkins, and just so many other people that have looked at it and have Roberto Duran have said it's the most beautiful belt they've ever held in their hands. So if you want one of these, the only way you can do it is through this website that we have above us, and through this QR code. And then also what'll happen is you'll have something that is historic. There's only 700 of these being made, and you'll have one of 700, and then we're going to destroy the design, never to be made again. So we'll jump right back in. You were about to say something, and we'll get to what Paul had to say. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No problem. I was saying that, during that time, right, when I came out and I said to the cartel person, I said, I'm in. And, there's a proverb that talks about that: as a dog returns to his vomit, so do fools repeat their folly. And I fell right back into the same old behaviors and thinking of money instead of thinking about family, thinking about, I'm going to destroy people's lives. Why get involved in this? But I decided to go right back in and accepted the deal. And so I started to, again, distribute cocaine throughout the Eastern Seaboard, and millions of dollars.
This is by yourself. Your brothers aren't involved.
No, my brothers aren't involved because my other brother was still in jail.
Okay.
And my other brother came to the country again, was on the outskirts. He wasn't doing anything because he was a fugitive, right? So he was living in Miami, and then someone recognized him because he started to talk to this individual, and this individual was working for the police, not the feds, but the state police, and they gave my brother in. So my brother was arrested, extradited back to New York.
Wow.
And we bailed him out on $500,000. And then when he came out on bail, he said, what are you up to? I said, I'm back with the cartel. And I said, I'm distributing hundreds of kilograms of cocaine. And he said, I want in. On bail. And he said, look, I got this guy. Was my courier. He owns a trucking company. We can we can pick up the drugs in certain states, have them pick it up. These trucks now were constructed with what they call in Spanish caletas, which is secret compartments to house in the bed of the trailer. And so he would go pick up the drugs for us, and we would pay him $400, $300 per kilogram to bring the cocaine from Miami, from the West Coast. And so my brother trusted this guy. He said, I know this guy for a long time. So I said, okay, if you trust him and you know him. So we gave him, through my workers, we gave him about 11 kilograms of cocaine. He was working with the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency.
Oh my goodness.
And then they have us under surveillance. They're recording everything. And we're talking about the next movement of 100 kilograms of cocaine, conspiracy to transport, all this stuff. And it's being recorded, Joe.
Wow.
And what happens next? We're in our Mercedes. We're hanging out. We're going to Manhattan. And all of a sudden, SUVs, tinted glass window.
Wow.
They surrounded our vehicle.
The federales.
Federal agent. DA. So they arrested us. I'm trying to hide my black book. But I have, my numbers were in sequence. I had them in different, sequence numbers and multiplied different ways. So they grabbed my black book. They arrested me and they take me and they send me to MCC Brooklyn. Right. Then they transport me to MDC Brooklyn, where
correctional centers.
Yeah. Where the former president of Venezuela, Maduro, is being housed.
Wow.
It's called Metropolitan Detention Center. They sent me to that federal prison where P.D. was where he was housed. So I'm in this jail, federal prison. I'm like, I call my attorneys again, get me out of jail. And they said,
let's hold that. Let's see what Paul has to say here, and then we're gonna get me out of jail. We're gonna come back to that, okay? Paul, he is asking, have you ever read Steve Levitt's Freakonomics? The study focused on a Chicago drug gangs, on a Chicago drug gang, showing they operated like a standard corporation where street level dealers were not lucrative, earning below minimum wage, or Tom Wainwright's narconomics. How the drug cartels operate like Walmart, McDonald's. If you have, what do you think of either or both?
Okay, I've never read the book, but I'm familiar with the operation, and it does operate like a McDonald's, and does operate like one of these Fortune 500 companies, because it's a very systematic planning strategy in how the drugs come in, their distribution points, and also how they call it washing the money, and how it goes back into these companies and then eventually makes their way back to Colombia and other parts of South America. In terms of the profit margins and why people get involved in my level is because I'm seeing millions of dollars that I have access to, even of profit. They have access to hundreds of millions of dollars. I have access to millions of dollars of profit. And so in my case, I never dealt with a low street vendor or drug dealer. It was all wholesale. Now you have these people that my clientele that I used to sell to, they then take that drugs, they cut it into grams, and then they sell it in a street level. Then they have their workers, which they sell in street level price. That's the way it operates. Yeah. So,
Paul, thank you. Thank you, Paul, for that question.
Thank you. Yeah. So getting back.
So I want out.
I want out. I contacted my attorney and said, get me out. Kenneth Shriver and Associates. That was the law firm I used to use. And so they eventually got me bail, $500,000. And I was released. My brother was still incarcerated when I got arrested me in the feds. My other brother that was in the state, he was still doing time. And I'm out. And I'm thinking, what in the world I'm going to do now?
And your wife, what's happening with her during this whole time?
My wife is distraught. My kids they're oblivious to what's going on. My parents are suffering. They said they never came to this country to have 3 of their sons incarcerated or involved in criminal activity, right? Because our upbringing, in terms of our family nucleus, we had somewhat of a good upbringing. It's just that our criminal activities on the outside was bad, right? And so my parents were distraught, hurting. My wife was hurting, right? We were hurting people by the drugs we were selling. And so eventually I'm out. I go to my attorney's office and I said, what am I looking at? What am I confronting in prison time? He said, 18 years to life.
Shoo.
And at that moment, Joel, I said, I am going to be, I didn't tell him, but I said, I was thinking in my rationale or in my crazy thought, I said, I am out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going to be a fugitive. And so every day I was drinking.
So you're out on bail.
Out on bail, $500,000. I'm drinking. I'm in clubs. I'm in casinos. I have chauffeurs driving me around, guns on my side, going crazy, saying, what in the world I'm going to do? And I remember this day coming out of a club. I'm in the club. I'm in the VIP. And who I run into, Mark Anthony, and he's there. And I'm drinking. I'm partying. And I get out and I tell my driver, take me home. I'm just tired of just running around. I want to see my wife and my kids.
Now he was with J-Lo at that time, wasn't he? Mark Anthony?
This is in the 1997.
Okay. It's before that then.
Yeah. And so I said, take me home. Take me home. So he takes me home. Once I get to the community, I go through the gate, right? And I'm in my house. The very next day, the phone rings, and it was the DEA, state police, marshals, and they told my wife, we have your house surrounded. Tell your husband to throw the guns out the window, to surrender himself. We don't want no problems. I put on my clothes. I try to jump out the window. I told my wife, my life is over. Open the door. At that moment, they arrested me. I was just...
Were you thinking suicide by cop or something like that to end it?
Yeah, I was, and not at that time. But I was so, drunk still from the night before. Yeah. That all I wanted to do was drink water. I was so thirsty. I said, "Give me a glass of water." And so they gave me a glass of water. And then they hauled me to the federal vehicle, and they sped away. And I remember looking back, I saw the feds celebrating. We got this drug dealer, right? Wow. This is what they were saying, according to my wife, because she was there. But I was just seeing them, raising their hands up in victory, right?
Yeah, just pumping the fist.
The fist. Yeah. So as they were going to the prison, I remember telling the officer, I said, my life is over. It's worth nothing. Open that. I want you to jump to the back, shoot me, open the back door. Just kill me, right? And then he said, you never know what could happen in your case. I didn't know what he meant by that. And so, at that moment, my brother, he was praying for me. He had this encounter with God in prison. He prayed for me. He just said, God, send my brother to the same prison where I'm housed. They're going to kill him out there. He heard I was going crazy. I had a gun on my side. I was just going crazy, right? And lo and behold, they send me to the same facility. I waived my extradition rights. Wow. In Pennsylvania. It's like Con Ed. They put you, you're handcuffed. It's an airplane that takes you over. They send me over to MDC Brooklyn. And as I enter the facility and the dormitory, I run into my brother.
My goodness.
And he raises his hand in sort of an acclamation and just says, praise God. My brother's here. And I look at him with indifference and I said, praise God, I'm here. You've been praying for me to be in prison with you? Have you lost your mind? Are you crazy? Now we're both in jail. So, I was there.
Put a pin in that. Let's go. Let's see what Paula Mendoza, I think. Mendoza. I'm sorry. Were you? We'll go back to praise God. Okay, we'll pick it up from there. Were you? Let's see. Were you connected to the Sinaloa cartel led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and Ishmael El Mayo Zambada, the most significant drug trafficking organization responsible for smuggling large quantities of cocaine into New York area, including Brooklyn?
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, he was. I was not directly involved with him, but I'll divulge this information. He hooked up with someone that they became partners, and then Guzman was the distribution point from Mexico to the United States. And this other individual, I'm not going to mention his name, this other individual was the one that was giving him the cocaine. He would distribute it, right? Now, that individual got arrested, and my attorney represented him. And he became a CI, it's called confidential informant, and he ratted out on the cartel, and which I never did, but he ratted out on the cartel, and he is in witness protection program, and this individual got a hold of my book, and he was impressed by the transformation. In
your life, because he knew of you and probably knew you, right?
Yeah, probably knew me, but I never had connections with him directly. No, but I know of him, Guzman. He's in Colorado in the Supermax penitentiary. Yeah. So
before we go back to, are you finished with that response?
No, it was just that I was in jail, wanted to commit suicide, going crazy, and lost my mind, and eventually decided to straighten out my life in prison, and I started to take biblical studies in different universities, and eventually came the day of my sentencing. If you want me to speak further on that.
Yeah, let's jump into that without glorifying what you experienced in any way, but acknowledging the past. What do you think draws people, or what drew you? Was it survival? Was it ambition, influence, money, or something else? What pulled you in at that time? Both times, I should say.
Yeah, what pulled me in was more the adrenaline of making all this money, having this power, having access to many things, because there's a scripture that says that money makes the world go around, and so I had that influence of money. And at my command, I could make things happen. And so that excitement, which I call sin, but that excitement of doing it, and not seeing the ramifications of what I was doing, because I was in a different level, thinking that I was protected. It was a facade of this wall of protection, because I had money, I had power, and I had influence. And I thought that I would never either get caught or I would get away with it.
The adrenaline rush is so powerful, isn't it? It's intoxicant all by itself.
Exactly. Yes. And that's what happened. That's what kind of drew me in. And obviously the money, you know, and you want more of it and more of it. And I was blinded to the reality of the things I was doing, because I was in this fantasy world of money, power, sex, woman, and this lifestyle, and having access to these different celebrities. I would go to their homes and always portray myself as a businessman, never as a drug dealer or a drug lord.
Wow. So in the paranoia, I know my brother, when he was much younger, he was the top marijuana, dope dealer in Maine, state of Maine. And he told me one time that someone put a hit out on him, and within 30 minutes, he had a 38 Smith & Wesson, 38 special with the filed down sear pin. And less than a half hour, he had that. That's the kind of world that you were in?
That's the kind of world I was in. The thing is that I was always protected because I had people in my surroundings. So I didn't, there were people that I knew that unfortunately passed, but that never came to me. It came close to me because at one point my brother was kidnapped, and my father, they hit him over the head with a gun, and they tied him up, and there was a crazy stuff that happened. But thank God no one was killed. But my surroundings, there were people that I know that unfortunately things happened. Yeah. And they ended up in jail, or they ended up dead because of their actions of what they did. So, during my incarceration, I straightened out, I took biblical studies there, and even my attorney, I said, look, all I want is for you to get me the best sentencing in my case. So I made him money in prison by getting clientele, getting people that needed attorneys. And I remember that the day of my sentencing came. This was during 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And 9/11 happened, so they locked us down. And then eventually they postponed my sentencing date, and then eventually put it on the calendar. And my attorney said, look, you're confronting about 12 to 18 years. And I said, look, whatever, God has for me, I just know that upon my release, I'm going to help a lot of young people get back on track, get their lives together. Because I had a messed up life as a juvenile and as a young adult. And I remember just having that prayer with God about that. And I went to the courtroom of my sentencing, and the prosecutor, which this is recorded, he said, Your Honor, the man that's before you, I hope whatever sentence you impose on him, that he will continue to do the things he was doing in prison to educate himself and help others, that he would do the same thing out in society.
This is the prosecutor.
The prosecutor looked at my attorney.
Oh my goodness.
Is this for real? And so my attorney gave his monologue, and he explained the life-changing experience that I had and the things that I was doing, helping other inmates.
Now, how did they know this? And what were you doing?
Because they would send, I was helping them read and write. There were people that were illiterate, and they had no knowledge of how to read nor write. And also I was doing a lot of counseling in prison. And it was being acknowledged by a lot of
and that got back to them.
That got back to them because they wrote letters on my behalf to the my attorney, and my attorney submitted that as evidential evidence of the transformation that I was having in prison. So that got to the judge and to the prosecutor, and it was just amazing what happened, because the prosecutor spoke on my behalf, and then the attorney spoke, and then I gave my little speech, and I said, if you give me the opportunity, I am going to make a difference out in society. And I was sentenced to only close to 5 years of incarceration.
My goodness.
And I was like, thank you, God. And upon my release, I was on probation. I started to work for my attorneys as paralegal, because I took paralegal courses in prison. And left that, and then I started a business with no money, a newspaper business, and then I started not-for-profit, and I started to get recognized by different politicians in my community. And
your wife had waited for you.
My wife had waited for me.
My goodness!
All those years, she had waited for me.
My goodness!
So I started to work in these started not-for-profit. Got recognized by politicians, and they eventually connected me with different ambassadors. And then I started to get involved with sending aid, humanitarian aid, to different countries around the world.
That's with Wycliffe Jean, the hip hop artist, right?
And then Wycliffe Jean got involved in this whole project called One Voice. I started to speak at different universities about the situations that were happening in Dominican Republic and Haiti. And I spoke at Columbia University and different universities about the disparities and the issues that countries deal with that have borders, and how we can work together to bring solutions. And so they invited me to the UN. This is an ex-drug lord speaking before heads of state. Now they're my friends. And the crazy story of this testimony is that nowadays my friends are DEA agents where I counsel them. And one in particular, his son is dealing with some issues, and I'm helping them. And justices from the Supreme Court here in New York, I counsel them.
Wow.
And then I became a pastor, I became a chaplain. I've done a chaplain. I did chapel for the New York Mets. I have a lot of Major League Baseball players that are friends of mine that I talk to and counsel. And it's just a crazy ride from this man that was a drug lord distributing cocaine to helping the world, bringing reconciliation and helping people get back on track, and helping young people as well.
We've got about 5 minutes left. And I know that you at 14 got involved with, your bad behavior and everything. And that just kind of planted the seeds for what you're doing or going to enter into in the drug industry. You have a real passion for reaching and connecting with kids under 14, and also talk about the hours 3 to 6 p.m. and how important it is to reach kids between ending school for the afternoon and getting home.
Of course. So we have this program called Powerhouse Kids, and we provide academic skill sets for kids, such as guitar, piano, violin. They come here on a Saturday program, and they learn these different classes, and then they use that skill set to empower themselves and better themselves. And so from 3 to 6, it's important that what we do, we mentor these people, these kids, right? So they don't fall into the same behaviors that I was once in, because I was introduced to marijuana, I was introduced to alcohol, and I didn't have a mentor. My dad was not always around. My mom worked late hours as well to sustain our family, my brothers, right? And so this is so vital. And so 4 to 14 is when a child is developing. After 14, if they're not reached, right, with a positive upbringing in terms of education, to have an experience, one that they can understand and say, I don't want to get involved what Herman used to do with drugs and alcohol and gangs, because these are the consequences. So we can walk them through those effects that drugs have, right? And then bring them to a safe setting where they can learn how to tap into their skills and learn how to play the guitar, learn how to play the piano. That's what we do here over at our ministry, which is called Promise Ministries International.
Well, that's terrific. And so, and how do you connect with parents and grandparents? Because they all play a role in this. I mean, if you have them only for a few hours, they go back home.
Definitely. And so, what we tell parents is this: look, you have a responsibility with your kids, and perhaps you're disconnected with the culture, and the culture is forever changing, and they're being, bombarded with all sorts of, social media, technology, AI, all these things, right? That perhaps their parents, they're not accustomed to, and they're not attuned to what's happening with their children. And so we try to educate their parents and say, look, you come to this facility and we're going to talk to you about these things. We're going to also counsel you. And so you can get away from your day-to-day, family obligations. Your kids are here in a safe environment. They're being taken care of, and then you'll have time with us. So that's what we try to do with our parents, to sort of stimulate them in the reality of a lifestyle they never experienced before, perhaps. And their young people are experiencing, because they're seeing it at school. They're seeing it through their iPhones, through their smartphones. And so they're constantly being bombarded with all kinds of negative stuff. And so this is what we do. We open our doors and educate them on these issues, these vices that are out there.
We've got about 30 seconds. What would you say to your younger self?
Wow. I would say stop and listen to the advice of my parents or my peers or even my teachers, right? They used to say, Herman, stop what you're doing. And so I would stop and examine myself and say, I wouldn't want to go down that route of what they're telling me, that I'm going to go down that route. And that's what I would say to myself, right? To kind of stop and listen to the advice of my peers or people that really cared about me.
Well, thank you, Herman. This has been wonderful. Please, when you go home this evening, give a special hug and a kiss to your wife for her patience, her kindness, her forgiveness, and all the rest, and your kids also.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.